All right, so today we're going deep on something that I think a lot of people find kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
Thesis writing.
Right.
Specifically for AI.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, like, even just looking at your source material, outlining the whole structure, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of felt a little intimidated myself at first.
Oh, it's a lot to take in.
It is, but we're gonna break it down
Sure.
into those manageable pieces so that by the end of this, you're feeling excited,
Definitely.
not overwhelmed.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So, and I think you would agree with this, that a really solid structure
Oh, absolutely.
is essential when you're working in a field as dynamic and complex as AI.
It's like the foundation. You're building a house. You need that strong foundation.
Yeah, it's a roadmap.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Keeps you on track. Make sure you don't miss any important turns.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your source outlines a pretty standard structure. We start with the usual suspects, title, page, abstract, and then we get into the meat of it, the introduction,
Yeah.
the theoretical framework, the methodology, and so on. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was the inclusion of a specific section on legal and normative frameworks within that theoretical framework chapter.
Yeah.
It feels like AI research is constantly bumping up against these big ethical and legal questions.
It really is. And that's something that any researcher in this field needs to be thinking about from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about, coding a cool algorithm.
Exactly.
It's about the real-world impact of these technologies.
Right. And so, for instance, if you're dealing with big data, you have to think about things like data privacy,
Right.
bias in your algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially, the negative consequences that might come up.
Oh, absolutely. So you're laying this, ethical foundation,
Yeah.
right, in that theoretical framework.
Yeah. So something else I thought was interesting was the optional annexes.
Yes.
What kind of stuff usually ends up there?
I think of the annex as kind of like the behind-the-scenes stuff. So it's where you would put things like, your raw data sets, any really complex code snippets, or things like the full text of any surveys you conducted, things like that are really important for transparency and reproducibility.
Gotcha.
But might be a little bit too much to put in the main body of the thesis.
Right. And especially, I would think, with AI research, where so much of it is about visualizing
Absolutely.
your findings.
Yes.
You might have all kinds of charts and graphs.
Detailed charts, graphs, diagrams, things that really give the reader a deeper understanding.
Yeah, a more immersive view of what you're doing.
Exactly.
So we've got this structure in place.
Right.
But why is it so important? I mean, is this just some academic tradition that we're clinging to?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Okay.
It really reflects the scientific method itself. By following this structure, you are making sure that your research is rigorous and reproducible, and also relevant to the scientific community.
Right. So it's so that other people can essentially follow your footsteps
Exactly.
and see if they get similar results.
Understand your process, verify your findings.
Right. And so it's like this collaborative effort as opposed to just, one person in a silo.
Exactly. And honestly, it makes the research process a lot easier
Right.
for the researcher themselves, because it really helps to organize your thoughts, plan your research.
Right. I mean, it's like having a blueprint
Yes,
for
exactly.
building a house.
You have a good plan, and you can make sure everything's going to stay upright.
You can get creative with the decor,
You can.
but you got to have that solid structure.
You do.
Okay, so let's talk about that AI twist.
Okay.
How does the focus on AI research, how does that specifically impact the way that we approach this structure?
I'd say the methodology section becomes even more important when you're talking about AI research, because you really have to be explicit about things like the algorithms you're using, the data sets you're training your models on.
Right. So it's not just, outlining the methodology. It's really explaining the nuts and bolts
Yes.
of these AI systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that level of detail is essential for reproducibility.
Right. And so what about those ethical considerations that we talked about before?
Yes.
Do those become even more important when we're talking about AI?
Oh, absolutely. And, depending on the research you're doing, you might need to dedicate a significant portion of your thesis to discussing the ethical implications,
Okay.
especially if it's something that could have a big impact on society.
Right. And so you'd be discussing, analyzing potential bias in your algorithms.
Exactly.
You'd be talking about the potential consequences of deploying this AI.
Yes, and thinking about how to mitigate those risks
Right.
and ensure responsible AI development.
It's like AI adds this whole other dimension, right? Where you really have to think about it from all these different angles.
Absolutely.
So for anyone listening out there who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by
Yeah.
this whole process,
Right.
it's all about breaking it down into those manageable sections.
Exactly.
Starting with that solid foundation.
Yes.
With your theoretical framework,
Your literature review.
getting really specific in your methodology,
Absolutely.
and of course, not shying away from those ethical considerations.
Those are so important.
Super important. And remembering that you've got this roadmap, this structure to guide you every step of the way.
Exactly. And, I'd say find a problem that really excites you.
Yeah.
Something you're passionate about, because that passion will fuel your research and make the whole process much more rewarding.
I love that. Yeah. Find that thing that keeps you up at night.
Yes.
And think about how AI can help solve it.
Absolutely.
Because, who knows? Your research could lead to some really groundbreaking solutions for some of the world's biggest challenges.
Yeah. That's the power of AI.
That's the power of a well-structured research project.
It is.
And that's the power of a deep dive.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
See you next time.
See ya.